So welcome everyone. Welcome to TIG's February event. Welcome to everyone who has been returning and you've been with us since day one. Welcome if this is your very first TIG event. It is such a joy that you are joining us and spending your time with the Troy Interfaith group. It is such a joy to be with all of you. I am Pastor Chris. I am the pastor at Northminster Presbyterian Church, but I am also the convener of this group. So we have a wonderful presentation from two amazing people up ahead, but I did want to take just a moment and let you know what is going on next month. If you were on early, you saw the flyer for the March event, which was an idea from one of the people on our leadership team. And the question was, how do clergy end up being clergy? How do you know that you're being called? What's the process like, both spiritually and academically? And so next month, we're going to have a panel of a bunch of different religious leaders, and you all get to ask questions to get to know what the process is like, because not everyone knows what the process or what it even takes. And I know I definitely don't know what it takes to be a different kind of religious leader. So we're excited for that event. That said, also noting that that event will also be on Zoom. So look out for that Zoom link. But one more note. If you are inspired by TIG, if you love coming to these events and you have ideas of things that you would want to share with TIG, we are more than willing to accept people who are gracious with their time, who want to be on our leadership team. Our leadership team's about 4 people right now, and we would love some help because these events take a lot of coordination. So if you are amped up about this event and future events, please consider what it would be to join the leadership team. But that said, I want to turn it over to our first speaker tonight, Lori Weeks, who is the tutor coordinator for the Oakland Literacy Council. She became involved with the Oakland Literacy about 7 years ago as a volunteer tutor herself. And it's something that she's still doing and she still finds very rewarding. Prior to joining the Oakland Literacy Council, she worked in communications and in teaching and writing. So it is my joy to turn it over to you, Lori. So take it away.
Thank you very much to the leadership team for allowing me to present here tonight. I'm going to share my screen because I've got some slides that I wanted to share with you. As Chris said, my name is Lori Weeks, and I will share my contact information when I'm done at the end of tonight. We are one of the oldest nonprofits in Oakland County. We've been around for almost 38 years, serving people who live and work throughout Oakland County. And the literacy in our name may make you think that we are only about reading. But I want to share with you a definition from UNESCO about what literacy really means. And it means being able to identify, understand, interpret, and compute with information that you get so that you can fully realize your goals, to realize your potential in society. And we are expressly focused on helping adults who are lagging behind in their literacy goals throughout Oakland County. And it's estimated that there's close to 200,000 adults in Oakland County who are functioning at the lowest levels of literacy and numeracy. And what that means is that things that you and I take for granted that we can do every day, like balance our checkbook, read our mail, pay our bills, understand instructions that we get from the doctor's office, those things are really difficult for somebody who's maybe functioning at an elementary school level of literacy or math. And that is a problem for all of us because people who have low levels of literacy tend to be unemployed or underemployed, and they tend to use a lot more of the public health system than they otherwise would. If you aren't reading your prescription bottles, you may wind up in the hospital more often. If you're not reading your discharge instructions from a hospital, you might wind up back at the ER again. And the real tragedy is that there is a generational problem that happens where parents who have low literacy levels tend to have children who grow up to have low literacy levels as well. So not only do we want to educate kids when they're in the school system, but we want to educate their parents so that we can stop that generational problem. So Oakland Literacy Council is a 501c3 nonprofit, and our mission is really to deliver literacy. We believe that it is a right, not a privilege, and every adult is entitled to it, which is why all of the services we provide to the community are free. We serve two different kinds of adult learners. We serve English language learners. Those are immigrants who come to this country and they are learning the language. We also serve folks who were born here in the United States, but may have dropped out of high school. They may have had a reading disability or some other kind of learning disability, even though they stayed in school, that made it hard for them to master basic skills. And I'm just going to share a few stories about some of the people we serve so that you get a sense of why they come to us and what they're struggling with. This is Evelyn. And Evelyn is someone who dropped out of high school. She started a family and she had always wanted to get her high school equivalency diploma. It became imperative for her last year when her daughter died of COVID, and she became the sole custodian for her two grandchildren who were in school and struggling. And she realized she really couldn't help them with their schoolwork. So she is working with a tutor. She is studying both reading and math. She's making great progress, and it's her goal to get her high school diploma as a grandma, to set an example to her grandchildren about the importance of staying in school and finishing your degree. This is Kali. Kali is somebody who grew up in Gambia. So he spoke English, but he never had any formal schooling. And he came to us and worked on being able to read, just to handle some basic everyday tasks. And this is just a quick interview with him about something he's able to do now.
Okay.
I have a new job. I went for physical. They give me a form I can fill out. I can able to sit down there, fill the form by myself without asking for no help.
Have you ever done that before?
Never able to even try to read it or done it.
That's great.
Yep.
Okay.
So I just want to back up. So what he was talking about is being able to fill out that health history form that you get when you go to the doctor's office about your symptoms and your family history, that he was never able to do before, but he's now able to read it and do it. This is Sung Hee, another immigrant. She's from Korea, and listen to her little story about how isolated her life was until she started to work with a tutor and learn English, till how she feels now about the United States.
I live in here, no family, and I'm just lonely, and I have no friend, and I can't speak English, so can't go outside. I'm afraid. My tutor helped me to get a citizenship. November, it's time to vote time, and I went there. So I did first vote, and the sticker was on my here. I was so proud of it. Now it's a new country. It's my country. It's my country, and I can share everything and with them, and then I can join them. I have a voice.
So it was somebody who was afraid to leave her house because she couldn't understand anybody. Nobody could understand her. Till today, she's become a citizen of this country, which is a goal that a lot of our students have. And she has a part-time job, and she's very involved in her kids' education. So hopefully that gives you a range of the reasons that adults come to us looking for help and some of the things that tutors are working with them on. We are really not about helping people learn and appreciate Shakespeare. We're about helping them navigate their daily lives and make it easier for them.
Live in here.
Okay, so we provide help with reading, writing, math, English conversation, and digital literacy. So during COVID, we realized that a lot of our students, particularly the low-income ones, were left behind because they didn't have computers or internet connection, and they didn't have skills in using computers. So we added on to our offerings. We got a very generous grant from the United Way, which allowed us to provide loaner laptops and internet hotspots to our low-income students. And we gave them training on how to use the computer, not only so they could meet with their tutor, but as any of you who are still working knows, having some computer skills is absolutely essential in today's work environment. So we're giving them a leg up too on their basic skills. In a given year, we serve about 200 adults and we provide about 16,000 hours of instruction. And as I said, all of that is free. Students graduate from our program when they get up to the 9th grade level. So they may not be ready for college, but they're no longer what we call functionally illiterate. They are able to pretty much manage those tasks of adult living. And our model is centered around this idea of one-on-one instruction from a volunteer tutor each week. We put our students and tutors together for about a year. So it really takes that long if you're only working with someone for a couple of hours a week to notice a difference in their literacy level. And then we surround that personalized instruction with small group opportunities for English language learners and online learning, some self-paced software curriculum that students can do. And we have curriculum. So for those who have a reading disability, we have a special curriculum for that. We have curriculums depending on what their need really is, if it's workforce related skills that they need to develop or something else, we can help them with that. But we're focused on what the student needs to learn most, what their goals are, and helping them achieve those goals. Since the pandemic, most of our tutoring is being done virtually over a video conferencing system like Zoom. There is some tutoring that's being done face-to-face. That's just an individual call between the volunteers and the students. So I encourage your churches to think and other faith communities to think about ways that you could support literacy. We always have a need for volunteer tutors, and that is in math, reading, and English as a second language. And a couple of ways that you might think about doing that is a congregation could adopt a couple or a family in your community and work together as volunteers to support their English skills. I know there is a family of Syrian refugees in Troy that has a mother, a father, 2 adult children, and a child that is school age. And I have found tutors for the 2 kind of young adult children. I'm still looking for tutors for the parents. And there is another family in Pontiac, a husband and wife, who came here from Central America, who are looking for tutors as well. So there is a way to kind of do this jointly. Or if you had a number of volunteers in Troy that wanted to form a cohort and be trained as tutors, we could do that on site at one of your houses of worship. Because we provide all of our services and curriculum free to students, We also are always interested in donations. And one tangible way to do that is think about supporting a license for one individual student or more. Their online curriculum, it costs us about $100 per student to be able to deliver a year's worth of instruction to that student. So as far as becoming a volunteer, as Chris said at the beginning, I started as a volunteer tutor myself 7 years ago. I still am volunteering. It's a requirement of about 2 hours a week, and you can take time off for vacations and holidays and sick days. So it's not 52 weeks of the year. Because we are doing a lot of our work virtually, there isn't really a geographic requirement, although if you wanted to be placed with somebody in Troy, Troy is one of our high need areas. We provide about 6 hours of live training to our tutors before we match them with a student. And we do provide the curriculum that you would be able to use, as well as my job is to support the volunteers during the time that they are with us. So I just wanted to mention that we onboard new volunteers about every 6 weeks. So early to mid-March will be the next time when we will bring on volunteers. And that is kind of wraps up my presentation. I just wanted to share one last story. This is another immigrant who received tutoring services from us so that she was able to open up her own business. She has a tailor shop in Sterling Heights. And what I think is a wonderful gift of paying literacy forward, when her business got busy enough and she needed some part-time help, she came back to us and asked if we had an adult learner with some sewing skills, because she wanted to give them their first job here in the United States and help them begin to build their resume. And that happened. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Like I said, I will share my contact information, but we have a few minutes before the next presenter. Is there anybody who has some questions for me about all of this, what we do and who we serve?
So Lori, we did have one question pop up in the chat from Paul, who asked if you do any programs for financial literacy, not just like reading literacy.
We don't really, although that's certainly something we could offer down the road. Adding math tutoring is new in the last 6 months. So maybe financial literacy is an avenue we could pursue in the future.
So we do have a little bit of time. So if you have a question, you can either put it in the chat like Paul did, or feel free to take yourself off mute and ask yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. That was very good, Lori. I had a question. Do you have an age requirement for your volunteers?
They have to be adults.
Okay.
Because our learners are adults. Having said that, beyond that, there is no age restriction. We have college students who are volunteers. We have retirees and everybody in between. And you really do not have to come from an education background to do this, because we provide all of the training. I think what is helpful is if you are interested in helping somebody who's from a different walk of life than yourself, because you'll either be matched with somebody who is from a different part of the world, or perhaps had very different life circumstances than you did. So there's a question: what is taught in the training sessions? What materials are provided for the student and the tutor? So the training is in 2 parts. The first part, which is 2 hours, is really an orientation to the philosophy of teaching an adult, as opposed to working with a student or a child, and to our organization and kind of how we bring students in and track them. The second part, 4 hours training, is really kind of specific strategies that we know work very well with adult learners. For instance, helping them with their reading comprehension, or helping them with their pronunciation skills. So we do give you an instructor's guide that has loads of strategies in it. We spend that training kind of highlighting some of the most popular strategies. So when you come away, you should feel like you have some techniques that you can use with an adult learner. And beyond that, the curriculum has a lot of lesson plans already made up for you to use with the student. Anyone else? Okay, if you click on the chat at the bottom, I put my contact information in there. Brenda and Chris also know how to get a hold of me. Jane asked, do volunteers teach all subjects? No, they don't. So most volunteers work with one student, and they may work just on math, or they might work on just reading, or in the case of our English language learners, they're going to be working on reading, speaking, and listening. Got another question. Is basic computer literacy part of your program in the future? We do that now for students who need digital skills. We just had a man in the office today who bought his very first computer, does not know how to use a mouse, doesn't know how to use email. So he is getting some instruction on some of those fundamental basics, so that he can, he can come into the digital age. So that's right now done kind of on a tutoring basis as well, but we may offer it as a class in the future to specific groups.
All right. Well, seeing that we have no more questions, I invite everyone to give the applause hands or on your reaction bar down there. Thank you so much, Lori, for all that you do and for sharing all that wonderful information about a wonderful, just the amazing work that you are all doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Just a reminder, she did put her there. It's 2 or 3 questions up, but Lori did put her contact information in the chat. But now it's time for our second presenter. So Jim, I was looking at your last name, and I have to say, my dyslexia is getting me, so pardon me if I don't get it quite right. But Jim Krywolewski?
It's Sirleski.
Sirleski, my
Right.
apologies. I knew I was going to get that not quite right. So Jim is with the SHARP organization. He was the president of JDRJC Associates and has over 37 years with experience in the electric utilities business, working initially for Detroit Edison, and the accolades go on and on, but we brought him in to talk about home repairs and assistance for the senior persons with disabilities in service for men and women. So we are so excited. Jim, I'm going to get your presentation going here, and go ahead and take it away.
Thank you for that enthusiastic introduction. Really appreciate it, and certainly appreciate being here to talk about the Senior Home Assistance Repair Program that's offered in Troy. We can go on to the next slide. The mission of the SHARP program, it's twofold. It's to assist residents who are either seniors, they're age 60 or above, they're persons with disabilities as defined by the American with Disability Act, or they're servicemen or women. And what we're trying to do in this assistance is to maintain their homes so that they're livable in the homes and that they remain independent for a longer period of time by having this service. And it's also to enhance the quality of life by making the homes safer and by reducing some of the stress, confusion involved in making just basic home repairs. Go to the next slide on program facts, just a quick overall on what the program's about. We'll have a little more details with a few additional slides. But the program's performed in partnership with a new organization that was formed in Troy, Sharp Troy. And that organization right now has about 30 members to date, most of them being volunteers to perform the repairs. The city of Troy, and in particular its police and recreation departments, and the Troy Community Foundation. Those parties have met and put together agreement between all three of them in place, and spells out each party's responsibility in terms of the program. Sharp Troy started in 2007, and since that time, there's been over 4,000 requests to date that have been serviced, and over 1,000 homeowners served to date. Go through the history of Sharp. It really, in December of 2005, there was a church group at Big Beaver United Methodist Church who was scheduled to meet with the pastor and go through some items in that. The pastor was late, so when he arrived, he spoke about his visit to a shut-in who asked if he could change a light bulb for her in the ceiling. This would have required going up on a two-step stool to be able to do that, and the person, a homeowner, was very nervous about doing anything like that. The pastor agreed and he made the repair. When he came back to Big Beaver, they started talking in the group about identifying other examples of basic repairs that could be needed by seniors. And so, recognizing the need, the group came up with the idea to offer a program to help senior homeowners who were registered with the church, help them with basic repairs. Simultaneously, the group began recruiting volunteers to actually perform the work for the seniors. In mid-2006, the program was going along fairly well in both veins. They were able to find volunteers to perform the work, and they were able to find homeowners there that had repairs that needed to be done. So by that time in 2006, it looked to the group there that this is not only a program that could be useful for the church and the church people, but also what can be done is perhaps going citywide for the program. To be able to do that, they were approached, the group approached the City of Troy's recreation department in terms of Carla Vaughn, and they worked with Carla to identify what could be done at a city level and what type of funding could be obtained. And Carla knew of the group called North Woodward Community Foundation, the predecessor to the Troy Community Foundation. And that particular organization had given funds for programs that Carla had done before for the 50 and older citizens in Troy. That turned out as working together for the remainder of the year and trying to put together the agreements between the three parties and delineating what each would do in terms of coming up with a successful SHARP program. By January 2007, they were set to have a kickoff meeting to announce that the SHARP Troy program is available to the public. What subsequently happened after that was that the Troy program became a bell ringer for other programs, and we had other cities approach Troy. And before you knew it, we had 3 additional SHARP programs, one in Clawson, one in Madison Heights, and one in Auburn Hills, that started up. And so by 2011, we had 4 SHARP programs going in Oakland County. We go on to the cost to the homeowner. I think that's the next slide. The labor for the service is free. There is no cost to a qualified resident for this service. There is also was no income limit. So we didn't have a ceiling saying you could only make say 22,000 a year or 30,000 a year, or have income come in at that amount. And if you exceeded that, you would not have service available to you. That's not the case. We did not use an income limit, and we did not have a problem where we had anybody using this, using the program for their specific needs in that. And so with that, our volunteers policed that quite closely to make sure that that was not happening. The homeowners are required to pay for the supplies and are necessary to perform those repairs. And there is financial assistance available if the need exists. Next couple of pages indicated what service would be performed and what services are not performed. And these are examples of the work performed is what type of contractor or construction work or carpentry work, electrical work, painting or plumbing, heating and ventilating work or yard work, and miscellaneous. And you'll see those particular activities spelled in these 2 columns of work that was agreed upon that the SHARP program would handle. We go on to the next slide, page 8. This also outlined for people that here's examples of particular tasks or that we would not do. This was above the skill level of the volunteers who came forward to provide services. These would be not ones that we would normally do from that standpoint. So with that put together, then we established the request process, and there was 4 ways to be able to send in a request for assistance for the SHARP program. You could call and make a request by phone. SHARP had a phone system set up with voicemail to be able to take the information, and that phone was made available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to take requests in. And the office itself was open 2 days a week, or is open 2 days a week from 9:30 to 11:30 to handle phones conversations directly with people who wanted to register for the services. Or you could fill out the SHARP brochure that we put together. There was a form in there to indicate information about the requester and what jobs they needed done. Or you could also download the form from the foundation website or complete a form in person at the Troy Community Center. All these forms were reviewed by an intake coordinator, and Brenda knows very well the intake coordinator we have with the SHARP program. That's Mindy Spohr, and she's the one who would take a look at all these requests coming in, and then if there's additional information required, she would reach out to the requester to get all the information that was correct. The scope of work for the project is determined by an assigned volunteer who Mindy was able to match up to perform, particular work, and that person would contact a homeowner to schedule a convenient time to meet and discuss the work requested. And we pride ourselves on that. When we set up a time, we have a specific time and a specific day that's been agreed upon between the requester and the volunteer. So there's no such thing in the SHARP program as a gap of 4 hours or 6 hours, or it could be this day or that day. When a time is set, that is met in terms of getting the requests in. And finish off the request, and the necessary supplies that are determined. And And I mentioned, and the volunteer comes in at the scheduled time to perform the work. And the next slide, we talk about homeowners protection. One of the things that came up when we discussed being involved with having people going into other people's homes is, what can you do to ensure that there's not going to be any concerns of any concerns regarding perhaps things missing, taken. We went through, and what must be done is that the volunteers must obtain senior program volunteer application and agreement form to be filled out and given back to the Troy Community Center, to the Recreation Department. You know, also in that form is the authorization to perform a background check and the permission to do that by the request by the volunteer. When the background check comes back and the volunteer has passed, then the recreation contacts this Troy Sharp intake coordinator, Mindy, and our training coordinator, Keith Meadows. Training coordinator schedules the Sharp training session where he goes through and identifies exactly how the program works. And then we'll notify Mindy that that is completed and go on to the next step, where Mindy will come up with and give to the volunteer a photo ID badge authorization form. And that on the next slide shows that the form is taken by the volunteer and who contacts the Troy Police Department to schedule an appointment for the photo ID. After receiving the ID, then volunteer contacts the Sharp office ready to volunteer. Mindy then adds the volunteer to her list of about 30 volunteers who perform services like that. And also, again, will reinforce to the persons who have requested the work that they are only to let people in with the Sharp badge to perform the work. So that's the only way that a person should be able to enter that home. There will be no solicitation phone calls made by Sharp. Nobody's going to be able to take the information of our requesters and get those homeowners' phone numbers to do any type of phone calling to them. So that is protected that way. Regarding on the next slide, to talk about supplies process, again, either the supplies that are needed for the work is either purchased by a homeowner or obtained by the volunteer. And the volunteers give the client the survey card. There's a payment and donation card and a pre-addressed envelope that goes to the Troy Community Foundation. Troy Community Foundation will reimburse the volunteer if they spend any money for a particular task, and they'll hand in the receipts to get reimbursed. And then the foundation will send an invoice to the homeowners so they can pay for the supplies that way. What we have found is that there has not been any problems, and most of the time the homeowner, with what's described by the volunteer as being needed for supplies, will go ahead and make the purchase themselves. They're just so happy that they found somebody who can do some of these small tasks that they help them out. The client is to, like I said, to mail in the survey card and the payment donation card to the Troy Community Foundation. Regarding on the next slide, donations. There's no tipping of volunteers or baked goods or anything along those lines in terms of providing things to the volunteers. The donation card will be left with the homeowner. Donation can be either made with cash, check, or a credit card that the foundation processes. Again, since the Troy Community Foundation is a 501c3, the donation is tax deductible and is used to run the Sharp program. A donation letter is sent to the homeowner by the foundation for income tax purposes. The survey card is the next sheet, and what we do is we really want the requester to take a few minutes of their time and say, how would you rate the experience you had with SHARP on a 1 to 5 basis? And we do have approximately 25% of the time, we will get a response back from the requester. So about 25% of the requesters do provide information, and we normally wind up with the experience in the 4 to 5 range, in particular more towards 5. We also ask them to provide comments, and more often than not, that is also willingly done by the requesters. And that's about a third of the cards, about a third of the jobs that we do. We get about that many cards in for us to take a look at and incorporate those type of comments into the annual report that we provide to the city, or how well the program did. Typical comments that we get from the homeowners is, your program is wonderful. It has renewed my hope to know what others really do care, and thank you. And thanks so much for all your help. You have no idea what a godsend SHARP is for people like me. When you lose your helpmate, you feel so alone. Things he could handle with such ease are such a problem without him. God bless SHARP and volunteers like you. I am so grateful. And that is typical of the comments we get back from the people who had requested the service. We do have 2 additional programs that we're working on. One is the SHARP Surplus Funds program. This program has come about because, as we've learned over the years, this program turns a profit, and invariably we will collect twice as much money as we need than to run SHARP. So we were just setting up this program when COVID hit. And so right now with SHARP now that's back online, we're reinstituting this program, and to see, because this program we'll take a look at what's being requested or what we see in a house that maybe has a health, safety, or security issue. And we take a look at with our more senior coordinators or our repair people to take a look and come to a consensus on any type of request that comes in like that. Does it qualify for this program? Because this program will provide funds for supplies, and in some cases, professional contractors to do the work. So hopefully that program will be able to start this year and see how that goes. And then there's a program that we started several years ago by Mindy's husband on the SHARP Smoke Detector program, which is a program to ensure seniors and the persons with disabilities have working smoke detectors to protect themselves against fire accidents. The program is tied into change in daylight savings times, and so in April there, we try to tie it in, purchase the batteries and smoke detectors with the excess money from donations, and complete that work. So those are the 2 additional programs that we maintain with SHARP. And that is it for SHARP.
So now is the time. If you have any questions, feel free to put the questions in the chat box or take yourself off mute and ask them. Thank you so much, Jim. That was a lot of information. So
A lot, yes.
what are your all's questions? So one of my questions, just out of curiosity, knowing that this program is obviously successful, it's grown in both scope and size. Can you give an estimate of around how many people or how many requests come in like a week or a month, like just to give us an idea of scale?
Yeah, we probably have averaged in the earlier days, close to 300 to 350 requests that would come in on an annual basis. These last 2 years, the average has dropped because we have been able to work off some of the workload of repairs that were needed that were built up in the system. Now we're probably going to be averaging around, looks like around 250 requests that actually reach completion. There are some requests that we get in that halfway through you decide it cannot be done for various reasons. But we probably could safely say that we'll probably be around 250, an average of that for the time being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we
There
just
was
had a.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Was
We
there a
just
question
had
on-
another question come in the chat of,
Oh.
are you looking for volunteers with specific skills? I'm going to add in on that of what is like the average request and like the skill level of the request, and are you looking for specific skills?
We're right now at this time, we really have been concentrating on just getting the program restarted because of COVID. The program was shut down in March 2020, and we really opened it last year in November. Right now, we don't see where we're going to be reaching out as of yet for requirements, but we do have the system set up for us to be able to capture which requests are the type that we're going to see a lot coming in, and we haven't run all those statistics yet for the 2 hybrid years that we will match up and see, and that'll tell us better whether we're seeing maybe more construction, maybe there's things that really happen more that way, and that has been increasing. So we'll know better once we get a chance to do some of those annual numbers. Keith Metal, our training coordinator, is the one who's put together our database that collects all that information and allows us to take a look at which skill set is needed the most, and also what level that most of these jobs are at. Are they something that turned out to be more of a level 2 work and that was easy enough to do? So right now, I think we're still in the, okay, we're getting this going, and we're having our first meeting of SHARP that we've held since the pandemic started, to get together and take a look at some of these numbers like you're talking about and get a better feel. Do we have anything where we have to go out right now? Or are we still working off the backlog of what people's requests were for 2021?
Gotcha. So knowing that you all are just getting the wheels turning with some of the pandemic things, what are some of the precautions that volunteers are taking? It's one of our questions from the chat.
We do not have anything set up along those lines to, at least at this point in time, have to set up any masking requirements or anything along those lines. So right now, we've been concentrating again just being able to take those activities and more probably leaning towards making sure we do the outside ones for sure, since we can handle those a little more readily than some of the other requests that we might get in. So we still have to go through that and get that lined up and everything.
So our last question in the chat So you mentioned a few cities that Sharp was in, and the question is it only in Troy? Does it cover Clawson? I believe you mentioned Clawson. What are
Yeah.
the 4 cities you all are in once again?
Clawson, Madison Heights, and Auburn Hills.
Mhm. Yeah. So Joseph, it looks like you're in luck. It does cover Clawson.
Yep.
Yes, it does. And that's one of the real dynamic groups that we've had there. So, and I had talked with them recently in terms of how they're doing, and they're functioning, and they are taking requests with that program. So it's opened up for you.
Thank you, Jim. This is Joe from Oakland County, and it was a very good
How you doing?
presentation.
Hey, Joe,
Yeah.
how you doing?
Good, very good. Very good presentation. Thanks. Useful information.
Good, good. And like we've talked, we've always looked at other programs in the county or try to, or around to see if we don't do something like we did show on that one list like that.
Yeah.
Then we're looking for, is there somebody else who does do that so that we can make
Right.
sure that we leave a requester with an alternative, that you're just not coming here, you know, and got to know
Right.
that you
Right.
got to know, but you may wind up trying this particular organization and they may be able to cover that one type of request you need done.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Jim, one last question for this evening. Say, or you have posed a wonderful organization that makes some really a huge difference for those who you're working with. I mean, it's amazing. So knowing that we have a bunch of people here that have extra time and they're just itching to volunteer, how would a new volunteer get involved with the organization? Should they reach out to? Where should they go to be one of those Sharp volunteers?
What they really need to do is go to the Troy Community Center and the Troy Recreation Department and get the application. The application is a 2-page form, and on the back, on the form indicates for that volunteer to tell us what areas of repair are they interested in performing in. And also that's where they would sign off to give authorization for people to for the city to perform the background check of that individual. And that's really where it starts, with that Department of Recreation's volunteer form for senior programs, and that authorization, you know, background check authorization. You start with those, and then from there, you'd submit that form to Parks and Rec, and we would get notified that there's, you know, a application in the mill for somebody who's interested in coming. And then we would match that person up with our training coordinator, Keith Meadows, to go through and talk about what's involved with the program and see if there's interest based on what Keith has gone through with that volunteer, to make sure they're comfortable that, yeah, I'll have the time to do the work, and from that standpoint, and the skill sets and that. And Keith will do a good job of screening that initial introduction into Sharp.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I invite those that are on camera to once again give the celebratory hands of excitement, or do the reaction clap. Thank you so much, Jim, for your wonderful presentation. It's so good to hear about people hearing a need and just responding and saying, yeah, we can do that. This is something is in our skill set.
Yep, this was a perfect example of how you've got a church group that got involved with the city group to make things happen within a city. And there's a lot of these opportunities. This just happens to be one in terms of home repairs and that. But the need for that type of cooperation is certainly there and was proven with the SHARP program so far.
All right. Well, folks, with that, that is the end of our program for tonight. Thank you again to Jim. I invite you now. I know we've kind of kept everything on mute for the most part. You are invited now for a moment of chaos. You can take yourself off mute and greet everyone, say hello or good night, whichever you are feeling. But thank you all for spending the evening with us. Or if you're watching it on YouTube, thank you for spending an hour learning about these wonderful organizations. It is always an honor when people are willing to sign on to Zoom at the nighttime. So thank you all. It is a joy to be with all of you. Good night and bless you all.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Take
Thank you.
care. Great, guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much.